Good morning, everyone. Nowadays, we hear so much about the need to disconnect, to turn off the news, to log off social media, to put down the phone for our own good. But we are made for connection. We're now in the fourth and the final week of our message series called You Are Not Alone. Over the past weeks, we have talked about how the death and the resurrection of Jesus left the disciples initially feeling scared, separated, and isolated. And their path to understanding and belief didn't happen overnight. Similarly, for us, our re-entry into society after the pandemic, as well as our healing and our recovery, those things aren't happening overnight either. But we are starting to see signs of new life, and it is so refreshing to see more and more people at church in particular and around town in general. One of the things that really lifts me up, and we've been seeing people saying this each week, is, Father, we are so happy to be back. This is our first time in church since last March. And it's so joyful to hear people say that. At the beginning of the book of Genesis, God says, "It is not good for man to be alone." And so he created woman and established the bonds of marriage and family. And building beyond that, God gave us the community of believers called the church. God brings us together because we are not meant to live in isolation. It's a frightful thing to feel alone, to sit at home in an empty, quiet house, or to simply sit 6 feet apart. It's tough when you miss your family and your friends, and then you're missing those big events that were on your calendar. In today's gospel, Jesus tells us the parable of the vine to tell us a fundamental truth about connection. Jesus says, "I am the vine, you are the branches. As branches, we draw our life from the vine." We can think of an unborn child literally connected to the mother, feeding from the mother, drawing life from the mother, from nowhere else but from its mother. For us as branches, if we want to remain strong and bear fruit that enriches the world, we can only do so in connection to the vine. To disconnect from the vine is to become dry and lifeless. And so Jesus continues. He says, "Whoever remains in me and I in him will bear much fruit. Not the fruit of greater productivity or earthly success, but the grace, the peace, the joy, and the love that flow into the world from the fullness of our interior life." The letter to the Hebrews says this. And the purpose what we're trying to talk about is our connection to God goes along with our connection to others. This is what the letter to the Hebrews says. "Do not neglect meeting together, as is the custom of some, but encourage one another." We're living in a difficult time, and we have to be safe, but we just have to acknowledge a simple truth. Separation is not good for our souls. And a fear that I have, which is shared by many, is that after the pandemic, folks are simply going to stay away from the church. Not because they are scared or at high risk, that's a different thing altogether. But they're going to stay away because they don't realize that they have become disconnected from the vine that gives them life. Because here at Mass, We connect with God and each other. We connect with God preeminently through our reception of Jesus, who is truly present in Holy Communion. We connect with God through His Word. We connect with God through our music. We connect with God through our community and each other. So no matter what is happening out in the world, or really, no matter what's even happening in your life, when we are here and together, even if our lives are turned upside down, we are connected to Christ and each other, and we are not alone. The story of our lives is made of ups and downs, hills and valley, light and darkness. And others help us know that we don't walk this path of life alone. Not long ago, someone shared with me a story about a time when a member of their family received a cancer diagnosis. Before this diagnosis, this person was connected to so many people, extended family, friends, co-workers, other people in the community. But as the diagnosis became more and more widely known, it was as if those connections began to dry up, and people stopped calling, texting, and writing out. Pretty soon, this person felt separated, isolated, and alone. Maybe people didn't call because they didn't know what to say. Maybe they didn't call because they were afraid of saying the wrong thing. Or maybe they just simply thought it was best to say nothing and to let the person suffer alone. For the suffering person, though, the thought wasn't, oh, it's so nice of everybody to give me space. No, the thought that she had was, does anybody care? Where are all my friends? Why do I feel so alone? A while ago, one of my friends, a friend of mine, got into some trouble. And my first instinct was to stay away. And I did. For way too long. And then at some point it happened that we got together for a cup of coffee, and I had to own up to the fact that I should have reached out, but I didn't. Now my friend waved it off, but, and it's very keenly in my mind right now, I remember the sadness in his eyes and in his voice as he shared the names of a few others who he expected to reach out but didn't. It wasn't with judgment, it was just sort of a sadness that was a matter of fact. That was a moment of conversion for me. I learned in that coffee shop that it is always better to reach out than to do nothing. It's true. We often don't know what we're supposed to say to someone who's hurting. But you know what we can say? We can say, I'm thinking of you, and I just wanted you to know that. Or, I'm praying for you, and feel free to let me know if there's anything that you want me to pray for. Now, these things are easy. You can do it with a text message, a phone call, an email, a snail mail, or something else. But I should acknowledge this. There is risk. There is risk indeed. Because this person, the other person who's suffering, they could reject you. They could say something like, stay away, mind your own business, leave me alone, or something else. But the vulnerability you show in reaching out, I think, has so much more potential. Because think of it, the word that you speak could be just the thing that they need to hear. You could give them a word of encouragement at a critical moment. Whether you mean to or not, you might help them recognize that their life has meaning, purpose, and that they're not alone. You know, in a similar way, we see the fruits of these connections when we run into someone who we've lost touch with for a while, and then immediately, which is like we just pick up right where we left off. Because that's the deep, abiding power of connection. Recently, I was talking to a group of our parishioners, and I asked them all to share around a question. And the question I asked them was, can you share with us about a time that your faith came alive? Now, one woman in the group spoke of her small group. And she said that as she navigated her evolving role as a mother, her small group became her life force. It became a safe place, a safe space where she could draw strength through her connection with others. But here's what's interesting. That group that I was talking to, asking them to share an experience of a time their faith came alive, everyone gave an answer that had to do with connecting with others or experiencing the faith of others. It didn't happen alone. Jesus chose the parable of the vine and the branches to teach us about the necessity of connection. Connection to God and connection to others. God specifically and lovingly planted you on the vine so that you're not alone. And more than that, He has given you a role in helping others know that they're not alone. So here we are now at the end of this series, and if none of us is changed, what does it matter? If someone else's life isn't better, what does it matter? So here is the challenge. The challenge for you and the challenge for me is this. I want you to think of one person who might be suffering or might not be, one person who might be alone or maybe not, one person that you can reach out to with love and concern. Maybe you just say, hey, I was thinking of you and I just wanted you to know that, or I'm praying for, or whatever. But reach out to one person this week, because you do not know the potential impact that your words can have in the life of another.